I should have never said it out loud. I haven't let a man inside this house in 2 years. The words hit me like a punch to the chest, stopping me mid-step on my porch. Rain soaked my boots, my hands frozen around the chainsaw. Marissa Hale, the woman I barely knew, the neighbor I'd seen fewer than a dozen times in 18 months, was standing there, trembling, arms wrapped around herself. Her eyes were wide, something between fear and desperate hope. And in that instant I realized she wasn't just asking for help. She was asking for trust. I wanted to ask, "Are you okay?" But that seemed impossible. Her lips moved, hesitated. I need help with repairs. The storm, things are broken, I don't know how to fix them." Her voice cracked, the words tumbling out in a mess of shame and urgency. I set the chainsaw down. My heart pounded. This woman, so careful, so private, just asked a near stranger into her house after 2 years of isolation. That meant something. It had to. "Okay," I said, voice steady though I was. "What needs fixing?" She gestured vaguely toward her house, reluctant, terrified, exposed. The kitchen faucet, a window upstairs, the garage door. Her words stuttered out and fell short. I nodded. "I've got tools. Give me 5 minutes to tell Lily." She blinked. Relief, confusion, a flicker of something vulnerable crossed her face. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't just a fix. This was a lifeline, and she was letting me be part of it. Inside, Lily was under the covers with a flashlight, lost in a book. "I'm going across the street," I told her, trying to sound casual, "helping Ms. Hale with some repairs." Her eyes went wide. "She's not invisible." "Nope," I said, smiling, "just private." Grabbing my toolbox, I stepped into the rain. Every wet step toward her porch felt like crossing a boundary I'd never expected to cross, toward a life I didn't yet know I wanted. Marissa opened the door before I could knock. Her hair was damp, her shirt clinging, her hands trembling slightly. "Water's coming in, I don't know what to do," she said, words tumbling faster than the storm outside. I followed her into the chaos, into the basement that had become a river. Tools, boxes, memories floating in the rising water. She flinched, slipping once. I caught her, arms steady, offering support without force. And then she stopped, pressed against me. "I can't do this alone anymore," she whispered. I held her, letting her tremble, letting her break without judgment. "You don't have to," I said softly. "Not with me." Her face lifted, eyes wet and wide, and I saw it. The moment walls crack, the moment two broken people realize they don't have to carry everything alone. The storm raged around us. Thunder rolled. Water seeped. But none of it mattered. Because in that basement, soaked to the bone, surrounded by loss and fear, a bridge had formed. A fragile, terrifying bridge between her and me. I didn't know how far it would go. I only knew I wasn't stepping back. The basement smelled of wet wood and old paper, a faint trace of paint thinner still clinging to the air. Marissa was shivering slightly, hair plastered to her face, but there was a determined set to her jaw. She gestured at the faucet. "It's been dripping for months," she admitted, voice barely above the sound of the rain hammering the roof. I knelt, opening the cabinet under the sink. Pipes corroded, washers worn thin. "Give me 20 minutes, I said, trying to sound calm, confident. She didn't move, didn't take her eyes off me. I realized then she was watching more than my hands. She was watching the way I moved, the way I approached the problem, like she was measuring whether I could be trusted. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I want to," I said, and for a moment our eyes met, holding the unspoken acknowledgement of everything neither of us had admitted. Loneliness, grief, the careful walls built around hearts that had been broken. Lily appeared on the porch first thing, rain boots half covered in mud. "Can I come?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I shook my head. "Not this time, you stay safe. Watch from here." She pouted slightly, then relented, and I led the way inside. Fixing the faucet was mechanical, routine. My hands knew exactly what to do, but every so often I glanced at Marissa. She was studying me, a small smile flickering across her face whenever I explained what I was doing. She didn't understand it, but she liked that I did. "Why do you care?" she asked suddenly, leaning on the counter. I paused, hands still on the wrench. "Because you asked for help," I said simply. The truth of it felt heavier than the tools in my hand. She nodded slowly, as if my words had settled into her. The garage door was easier than I expected. The sensor had been knocked askew. 15 minutes, a few adjustments, and it worked smoothly again. Marissa watched, visibly relaxing, letting her shoulders drop, even if only a fraction. Then there was the window upstairs. Her father's old room, untouched, frozen in time. Marissa wouldn't enter. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. I just assessed the balance spring, ordered a replacement part, and promised to return. Throughout it all, she lingered nearby, small gestures, offering me a towel, pouring me coffee, hesitating with every step like she feared overstepping invisible boundaries. I noticed, and I appreciated it more than I could admit. Every minor exchange was a small proof of trust she was giving me. After the repairs, she invited me to sit. Coffee. She offered, fumbling with an old coffee maker. Terrible, weak, bitter, but she was offering it, and that mattered. I took the cup, our fingers brushing, electricity sparking quietly between us. We drank in silence at first, the kind that felt loaded with observation, careful attention. I watched her hands tremble slightly as she poured, watched the way she softened when Lily's enthusiasm was mentioned. She was alive again, just a little, letting someone in. And for the first time, I realized how much I wanted to be the one she let in. Conversation began: small books, sketches, her illustrations for children's books. She spoke with precision, hesitant pride. I mostly illustrate for books, children's books. You're incredible, I said, meaning it. I moved closer to inspect a sketch, an old man's hand so detailed every wrinkle and callus told a story. She shifted uncomfortably. Most of them. I nodded. She smiled faintly. Time slipped by unnoticed. Lily interrupted only briefly, asking questions, fascinated, moving between the room and the porch. Marissa answered each with patient care, encouraging curiosity. I realized I was witnessing her in her natural state, alive, unguarded, human again. Later, while she worked in the garden and Lily explored, I repaired a loose railing on her porch. Every glance she gave me was tentative, small, careful, and I wanted her to notice. I wanted her to know she didn't have to fear me crossing the line. By the time evening fell, we were all soaked, tired, but connected in ways I hadn't anticipated. We shared a day of work, vulnerability, laughter, frustration. Small gestures, coffee, dirt on hands, accidental touches wove a fragile thread between us. Then the storm hit again that night. Flash floods, thunder cracking, lightning slicing the sky. I checked on Lily, then ran across the street when Marissa's text came. Water in the basement. I don't know what to do. By the time I reached her, she was panicked, frantic. Tools, boxes, memories floating in 3 inches of water. She slipped, I caught her, and she clung to me, shaking. I can't do this anymore, she said, voice raw. I held her steady. You don't have to, I whispered. Not with me. Her tears soaked my shirt, and I realized something terrifying and exhilarating at once. For 2 years she had been alone, protecting herself, afraid. And now she was letting me see her break, letting me be part of her life again. In that basement, soaked, chaotic, broken, we didn't kiss immediately. We just breathed, shared the understanding that we weren't alone anymore, that a bridge had formed between our lives, fragile and terrifying, but real. The storm outside raged, relentless. But inside, something else was beginning: trust, connection, something neither of us could name yet, but both of us recognized. And I knew one thing: I wouldn't step back. Not this time. The morning after the storm, the world outside seemed deceptively calm. Lily was up early, buzzing with questions about everything from breakfast to the rescued photos scattered across Marissa's house. I watched her from the doorway, smiling despite the ache in my chest. She was alive, curious, unstoppable, the same way her mother had been. And somehow that made the thought of Marissa easier to hold. We crossed the street again, this time with purpose. Marissa had called, her voice quieter, less panicked, but still carrying that fragile edge that made me want to protect her. Lily held the door open for us, bouquet of wildflowers in hand, announcing proudly, "For the table." Marissa's face softened immediately at the gesture, and I felt a small, dangerous warmth spreading through me. Inside, the smell of damp earth and paint thinner still lingered, but there was life here now. She'd moved things around slightly, set up her workspace, and even put a kettle on. Small acts that felt monumental to me. "You brought tools again?" she asked cautiously. I nodded. For the window and the faucet, we can finish what we started." Her eyes met mine, vulnerable, curious. She didn't ask why I was here again, didn't question my presence. She only allowed it, accepted it, and that was an invitation I wasn't about to refuse. The repairs were simple, but our conversation was not. It wove between mundane instructions about pipes and washers and deeper confessions about loss, isolation, fear. I learned how carefully she had shielded herself, how grief had become her constant companion, and how much she longed for connection but didn't know how to ask. 2 years, she said suddenly, looking down at her hands. 2 years I've lived like this, avoiding everything, everyone, myself sometimes. You don't have to do it alone anymore, I said, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my voice. You don't have to. A pause, then a quiet laugh from her, shaky but genuine. I forgot what that felt like. Lily wandered through the room, curious, asking questions, moving between us without hesitation. Marissa answered with patient attention, laughter bubbling up despite herself. Watching them together, I felt the smallest twinge of awe. She was opening up to my daughter, trusting her presence, and it was beautiful, terrifying, and intoxicating all at once. We moved outside to the garden. Mud under our nails, dirt on our clothes, and yet there was a rhythm to it. Lily's excitement was contagious. Marissa's careful guidance was steady, precise, patient. I stood back, watching, realizing that the laughter, the shared work, the small connections, was slowly knitting something new between all of us. When the repairs were done, we sat in the kitchen. The silence between us waited with all the things neither of us dared to say. I handed her a cup of coffee and our fingers brushed again, brief but electric. "You really didn't have to do all this," she murmured. "I wanted to," I said simply. And for the first time I let her see the truth behind my actions, not obligation, not heroics, but care. She laughed softly, shaking her head. "I'm not sure I remember what it feels like to be seen like this." "You're seen," I said, voice low, "right now." Her gaze lingered on mine, searching, questioning, daring. I felt it too, the pull, the curiosity, the silent admission that maybe, just maybe, we weren't as alone as we'd convinced ourselves we were. Later, when Lily was sent upstairs to reorganize the photos, the house felt different. Empty, but charged. Marissa and I worked side by side in quiet, both acutely aware of the tension between us, both careful not to speak too loudly or touch too freely. Finally, she broke the silence. "Last night in the basement." "Don't apologize," I interrupted gently. "You didn't. You let yourself be real, that's all." Her hands tightened around the box she was holding, eyes flicking to mine. "I didn't want to be vulnerable. I'm not good at it." "I'm not asking you to be perfect," I said softly. "Just present, that's enough." Her breath caught, small, fragile. I reached out, letting my hand hover near hers without pressing. "You're not alone in this anymore." She looked at me, long and steady, and I saw the moment, the small fracture in her armor where hope and fear collided. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice trembling. "So am I said honestly. "But that's okay, we figure it out together." The sun shifted, casting light through the kitchen window, illuminating her face, her hair damp from the earlier rain. She smiled faintly, and it was tentative, careful, but real. That tiny, imperfect smile made my chest ache in a way I hadn't felt in years. By the time Lily returned, we were both quieter, calmer. She bounded in, hands full of photos, excitement spilling over. The domestic rhythm we'd begun, coffee, repairs, laughter, conversation, continued seamlessly. The three of us moved as a unit, a fragile family forming not out of obligation, but choice. As evening fell, Marissa finally leaned back, relaxed for the first time that day. I haven't felt like this in years," she admitted, voice low, thoughtful. "You mean alive?" I suggested. She nodded. "Yes, alive." And I understood then, in a way I hadn't before, that this wasn't just about helping with repairs or fixing a flooded basement. This was the start of something far more complicated, far more terrifying, far more worth it. Because for the first time in years, we weren't just surviving. We were choosing to live. The next morning, sunlight streamed into my kitchen, cutting across the clutter of dishes and scattered papers. Lily was up early, already moving like a whirlwind through the house, asking 100 questions about what we'd done the day before and what Marissa might be doing now. I smiled, exhausted but content. "Dad," Lily said suddenly, holding up a wildflower she'd picked from our yard, "can I bring this to Miss Hale?" "Of course," I said. The thought of crossing the street to Marissa's house filled me with something I hadn't expected: anticipation. Not dread, not obligation, anticipation. By the time we reached her porch, Marissa was outside, kneeling in the flower beds, hands in the soil. She looked up, hair pulled back, a small smile breaking across her face when she saw Lily. "Perfect timing," she said softly. Lily dropped to her knees beside her and immediately launched into a discussion about what we should plant first. Marissa guided her gently, showing her how to separate root balls, plant seeds at the right depth, water just enough. I watched, standing awkwardly to the side, unsure of my place in this domestic choreography. "Coffee?" Marissa asked suddenly, looking over at me. "Terrible as always," I teased, and she laughed softly, a sound so delicate I almost thought it might break. She handed me the mug anyway. Our fingers brushed briefly, and the small contact sent a ripple through me, the kind that makes your chest tighten and your stomach flip in equal measure. The morning passed in a blur of soil, laughter, and quiet observation. Marissa was alive in ways I hadn't seen before, patient, precise, careful, but with sparks of softness and vulnerability that drew me in. Lily, for her part, adored her already. The way she looked up to Marissa, so naturally, without caution or fear, made me realize something I hadn't admitted to myself yet. This woman had a way of connecting that I couldn't ignore. Lunch was simple, sandwiches and lemonade, but it carried weight far beyond its ingredients. We sat in the backyard, fingers smudged with soil, sun warming our backs, talking about everything and nothing. Marissa shared stories of her childhood, the illustrations she loved to create, and the routines she developed after her father passed. I shared memories of Sarah, carefully choosing what to reveal and what to keep behind walls, though Marissa's quiet presence made it easier than I'd expected. After lunch, Lily wandered off to explore the garden, and Marissa and I found ourselves alone, cleaning up some of the mess from the morning. The air between us was charged but unspoken. I noticed how she hesitated when she picked up tools, how her eyes lingered on mine when she was unsure. "Ethan," she said softly, "thank you for yesterday, for being here, for everything." "You didn't have to invite me," I replied gently, "but I wanted to." Her gaze held mine, searching for some truth, some unspoken assurance that I wasn't here out of pity or obligation. I stepped closer, just enough for her to notice, not enough to cross a line. "You're not alone," I said simply. She took a small breath, letting the words sink in. "It's terrifying," she admitted, "to let someone in again." "What?" "I know," I said, "but it's okay to be scared. That doesn't mean you have to stay closed off." Her lips parted slightly, a subtle tremor in her breath, and I realized that for 2 years she had been carrying grief and isolation like armor, and now she was lowering it inch by inch, letting me see the pieces she'd kept hidden. We moved upstairs to check the window repair. I worked quietly, carefully, noticing the way she lingered nearby, watching, hesitant to step closer yet unwilling to leave. Her presence was comforting, grounding, and yet made my chest ache with something I couldn't name. "Lily's amazing," Marissa said suddenly, voice low. "She reminds me of what I've been missing." I looked up at her, catching the vulnerability in her eyes. "She's lucky to have you around too," I said softly. "She trusts you already. That means something." Marissa's gaze softened and she nodded. "I've been alone for so long, I forgot how it felt to connect like this, to be present for someone besides myself." "You're doing it now," I said, words simple but heavy with meaning. A quiet moment passed. Then slowly she reached out her hand. I didn't move at first, letting her decide the pace. Our fingers intertwined, tentative, testing boundaries, measuring trust. The gesture was small, unremarkable to anyone else, but monumental in its significance. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "Then we figure it out together," I replied, heart thudding. The rest of the afternoon passed in domestic rhythm, watering the garden, sorting through rescued photos, small conversations floating in the space between work and laughter. Lily's curiosity filled the air, her enthusiasm a reminder that life moved forward, even when grief tried to hold it still. By evening, we had settled on the porch with mugs of lukewarm coffee, fireflies blinking in the fading light. Marissa leaned back against me, small sigh escaping her lips. I haven't felt normal in so long, she admitted. You're normal now, I said, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. And it's okay to let yourself feel it. Her eyes met mine, soft and vulnerable. She shifted slightly closer and I realized, careful, hesitant, frightened, she was choosing to let me in. Not because of crisis, not because of need, but because she wanted to. Can I kiss you? She asked quietly, voice trembling. I smiled gently. Only if you want to, only because you choose it. Our lips met briefly, a delicate, tentative kiss that felt like a promise, not a surrender. Pulling apart, we both laughed softly, breathless, aware of the risk, aware of the possibility. Slow, I murmured. We take it slow. Slow, she agreed, leaning her head on my shoulder as the sun dipped below the horizon. And in that moment I realized the storm outside had not just brought chaos, it had washed away the barriers we'd built around our hearts. Something new had begun. Fragile, terrifying, beautiful. We stayed like that, two people choosing trust, choosing presence, choosing the possibility of something neither of us dared to name yet, but both already hoped for. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through my blinds, touching the kitchen counter in a way that made everything feel quiet, fragile, and new. Lily was already moving around, buzzing with energy, excited to tell us about the wildflowers she'd planted with Marissa the day before. She's amazing, Dad, I heard Lily say as we crossed the street. Can we do this every weekend? Marissa looked up from the garden, gloves caked with soil, and smiled. A small, genuine curve of her lips that made something shift deep in me. Of course, she said, voice soft but confident, as if she was allowing herself to be part of something again. Lily dropped to her knees beside her, immediately launching into a litany of questions about what seeds to plant, how deep to put them in the soil, how much water they needed. Marissa answered with patience, care, gentle correction. I stood to the side, tools in hand, but mostly just watching. There was a rhythm to them, a balance, a connection that didn't need words to feel complete. Later, we moved inside to sort through the photos Marissa had rescued from the flooded basement. Pages warped, colors bleeding, memories in disarray. But Lily's curiosity and attention brought a kind of order to the chaos. "This is your mom?" she asked, holding up a photo. "Yes," Marissa whispered, eyes distant, voice soft. "She loved me. She wanted the best for me." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand a little, but you're okay now. You have people here." Marissa smiled faintly, brushing a damp strand of hair behind her ear. And I realized the shift, the subtle but undeniable moment where trust had started to root itself in her heart. We moved to dinner preparation afterward, working side by side in the kitchen. Lily chopped vegetables, Marissa washed them, and I prepared the chicken, squeezing lemons and mincing garlic. Small domestic tasks, but laden with intimacy. Every glance we exchanged, every accidental brush of our hands, carried weight, carried unspoken acknowledgement of what had begun between us. After dinner, we settled on the porch. The air was warm, tinged with the smell of rain-soaked earth. Lily had gone upstairs to read, leaving us alone. Marissa tilted her head, looking at me with cautious vulnerability. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. "I know," I said. "I'm scared too, but it doesn't matter, we figure it out together." Her fingers found mine, intertwining with a hesitant, delicate certainty. The small gesture held the weight of years of isolation, of grief, of walls built brick by careful brick around a heart that had been broken. She squeezed my hand and I returned it, steady, reassuring. A pause stretched between us, thick with unspoken possibilities. Then she leaned in, resting her head lightly on my shoulder. "I haven't done this in years. Let anyone see me like this." "You don't have to hide anymore," I whispered. "Not with me." Her eyes lifted to mine, searching, questioning, daring. I realized then how much she wanted to believe and how much she needed permission to trust. Can I stay like this? She asked softly. You can, I said, my voice low, firm, as long as you want. Even the simplest words held a gravity neither of us had anticipated. The storm, the repairs, the shared laughter and tears, all of it had brought us here. She exhaled, a long, shuddering breath as if letting go of years of careful control. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily came running down the stairs, cheeks flushed, excitement spilling from every gesture. Can we play in the garden again tomorrow? She asked. Marissa smiled, bending down to Lily's level. Of course, but I have a project I need to finish first. I'll help, Lily said eagerly, and Marissa nodded, letting her enthusiasm be a bridge rather than a disruption. I stood back, watching them, feeling my chest tighten in a way I hadn't felt since Sarah. The connection between them, the ease with which Lily had accepted Marissa into her world, was both terrifying and exhilarating. I realized I was no longer a bystander. I wanted to be part of this. I wanted to see where it could go. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Marissa and I sat on the porch, quiet and aware of the night settling around us. The streetlights cast gentle shadows and the air was still. Ethan, she said softly, voice almost a whisper, what if this doesn't work? Then we deal with it, I replied, together. Her hand found mine again, fingers lacing, holding on. I don't want to be alone anymore, she said quietly. You won't be, I said, voice steady. Not as long as I'm here. The simple assurance seemed to ground her. She leaned against me and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. We sat in silence, letting the words, the moment, the connection sink in. No dramatic gestures, no declarations, just presence, trust, and the fragile beginning of something new. I realized then that the repairs, the storms, the afternoons in the garden, had done more than fix a faucet or a window. They had repaired walls neither of us realized we were ready to tear down. And for the first time in years, the possibility of moving forward, of being alive, of being connected, of being whole, felt tangible, achievable. Outside, the neighborhood settled into the quiet rhythm of night. Inside, two people who had spent years protecting themselves from loss and grief chose, quietly, deliberately, to be present with one another. And it felt like the first real step toward something neither of us had dared to hope for, but both of us desperately needed. Saturday morning arrived bright and warm. Lily was bouncing around the house, checking the clock every few minutes, her energy unstoppable. Marissa was already in the garden, kneeling in the soil, gloves covered in dirt, tending to the seedlings we'd planted together over the past week. The sight made my chest tight. She was alive here, present, letting herself be part of a world she'd avoided for 2 years. Ready to get dirty. She called when she saw us approaching. Lily dropped to her knees beside her without hesitation. What are we planting first? I hovered nearby, uncertain what my role should be, feeling the pull of something larger than mere neighborly assistance. Marissa glanced at me. Coffee inside if you want it, she said softly. I smiled, accepting the offer. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and earth. She handed me a cup and our fingers brushed, electric but gentle. A small gesture, but it carried the weight of trust, connection, and vulnerability we'd built over the last few days. We worked together quietly, moving through the garden with a rhythm that felt natural. Lily asked a million questions and Marissa answered them patiently. I watched them, realizing the bond forming between them, a bond that was teaching all three of us how to trust, how to care, and how to live alongside grief instead of beneath it. When the work was done, we sat on the porch, our mugs in hand. Marissa leaned slightly against me, resting her head on my shoulder. The silence between us was easy, not forced. It was filled with understanding, with acknowledgement of the boundaries we'd broken and the walls we'd lowered. I haven't felt like this in years, she whispered. You're allowed to, I said, to feel alive, to feel present, and you're not alone anymore. She turned her head to look at me, vulnerability and hope shining through her eyes. I'm scared, she admitted softly. So am I said, but that's okay, we figure it out together. Our hands found each other, lacing fingers, holding steady. The stormy chaos, the repairs, the laughter, the quiet moments, all of it led to this simple truth. We had chosen each other, Not out of necessity, not out of obligation, but because we wanted to, because we were ready. Lily's laughter floated from the garden, oblivious to the quiet intimacy forming on the porch. I glanced at her and then back at Marissa. She caught my gaze, a small smile on her lips. "We're doing this," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied, "together." Later we carried Lily home, arms full of tools, plants, and small treasures. Marissa walked with us, hand brushing mine now and then, testing, confirming the connection between us. At her door she paused, looking at me with a hesitant smile. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Yes," I said simply. "Tomorrow and the day after and as many days as we need." She leaned in briefly, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek, a promise, a reassurance, a beginning. Then she stepped inside, leaving me standing on the porch, heart racing, chest full and mind quietly wondering how we'd ever been alone for so long. The following week passed in a blur of small, deliberate moments. Mornings in the garden, afternoons fixing small things around her house, evenings of shared coffee and conversation. Lily laughed, learned, and grew alongside her. Marissa opened up more each day, letting the walls around her heart soften, letting herself be seen without fear. One evening after Lily had gone to bed, Marissa and I sat on the porch again. The air was warm, filled with the soft hum of crickets. Fireflies blinked their quiet patterns in the dusk. She leaned against me, resting her head on my shoulder. "I'm still scared," she whispered. "I know," I said softly. "And that's okay. But we keep moving forward together, step by step." She lifted her head, looking into my eyes. "I love you," she admitted, voice trembling but determined. I cupped her face gently. "I love you too," I said, the words firm, true, deliberate. "And we'll figure out everything else as we go, together." A small laugh escaped her, breathless and full of relief. "This is terrifying," she admitted. "I know," I said, "but it's worth it." Outside, the neighborhood settled into quiet, the world moving forward while we paused to acknowledge the fragile, beautiful connection we'd forged. Inside, Lily slept peacefully, unaware that the adults in her life were learning how to live, love, and trust again. We sat there, fingers intertwined, hearts open, two people who had spent years surviving alone, now choosing life, choosing each other, choosing hope over fear. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple, but it was real. And that was enough. Because sometimes the most extraordinary moments are the quiet ones, the ones lived in shared glances, tentative touches, whispered promises, and the decision to be brave despite knowing the risk. We didn't need grand gestures or declarations. We needed presence. We needed trust. We needed to choose each other. And in that choice, in that shared breath of courage, something lasting had begun. Something neither of us had dared to hope for 2 years ago, but both of us knew we couldn't live without now.